a song that combined athleticism with hallucinogenic drugs, which nobody does in folk music anymore. I would like to tell you an equally touching story that combines the same elements. I told you earlier, I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon. What I didn't tell you is that my father was one of them real jockey guys. And he liked sports and shit like that. I didn't really get into them until you could gamble on them. And somebody else was doing it. But when I was young, they wanted us to do it. And my brother was really good at it. My dad wanted us to play on football. My brother was good at football, and I tried, and I wanted to be good, and I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't that good. But I worked hard at it, and by the time I was a junior in high school, I had made the varsity football team, Beaverton Beavers, I was telling you earlier. All right? Now, a lot of people that come to folk houses didn't play on the team, so let me tell you what that was like. If you join a football team, that means that for 3 months out of the year, you and about 45 other guys are going to get together every day for about 2 hours. You're going to take off all your comfortable clothes, put on these ridiculously uncomfortable clothes, then you're going to go outside, and it doesn't matter if it's cold or hot or rainy or windy or whatever the fuck it is, you're going to go out there and run into and away from each other, all in relationship to the movement of this ball, while consistently being yelled at by adults. Now, your family will tell you, at least mine did, my family told me that I was representing my district. I didn't know what that meant, and that if things went well, we could win this district. I didn't know I was from a district yet, let alone that it was on me to procure this for us all in this uncomfortable outfit in the rain. But I agreed to do this thing, and in order to do it, you have to practice, right? So we have these practices every day, right? And part of practice is they have this sled, and they have these pads, and everybody pushes this sled while the coach stands on the back of it and yells at you. And in the game, I don't know if you watch football, but in the game, it never happens. You're never confronted with a sled. But we practice it. And not only do you practice it, you wait in line to push this fucking thing, right? So one afternoon, I'm a young man, I'm waiting in line to push something. And it's not sitting right with me. I look across the field and I see these other kids. They're wearing the same stuff they wore to school. And there's girls over there. And some of them are smoking, which everybody at that time, we knew that wasn't good. But god dang, they looked like they were having more fun. And so I asked this older kid in front of me in line to push the thing. I said, who are those kids? And he said, well, they're the burnouts. I said, what's a burnout? He said, the burnouts hang out in the smoke pit. I said, what's the smoke pit? He said, that's where the burnouts hang out. So I didn't know any more than I knew before. So I asked the coach, I said, Coach, what's a burnout from the smoke pit? And he looked at me with these sad eyes and he said, boy, Snyder, I would hate to see you turn into a burnout from the smoke pit. Sorry, Coach. I said, what's wrong with them, though? And he said, look at them, man. They're just a bunch of dirty sheep standing around in a field doing nothing. Well, that doesn't sound exciting, so maybe I won't do that. I don't want to stand around in a sheep like all that. So I won't do that. So one day I'm in lunch in the cafeteria, and this kid comes up and sits next to me, and I clearly recognize him as a burnout from the smoke pit. Well, I can't get up and leave, so I'm being polite, and we start this conversation, and he seems as nice as any of the other kids I know at school. And then at some point in the conversation, he says, hey, Snyder, man, have you ever tried psychedelic mushrooms before? And I said, no, I haven't. And he said, would you like to? And I said, sure, that'd be cool. So he hands me some, and I ate them. And about a half hour later, it occurred to me that I wasn't going to be able to go to football practice after school. So instead of practice, I went with my new friend to the smoke pit. And I'm standing there in my comfortable outfit, and I'm looking across the field at all my friends, pushing this sled, you know, and it's the first time I'd ever seen the life that was planned for me from a distance, you know. There they were, the goddamn football team. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody any more than the coach was, but I'll tell you this, friends and neighbors, it could be argued that they looked like a bunch of dirty sheep standing around in a field doing nothing. And as this was occurring to me, I looked up at the goalposts, and I swear to you, the goalposts turned into candles. And then they turned into Roman candles, and they shot off into space. And I thought, I'd never seen the goalposts do that before. I didn't even know they did that. Then I turn and I see my friends, and I swear this happened, that my friends, they're pushing this sled, and there's a coach yelling at them, and as I'm watching the sled morphs into Fred G. Sanford from the hit situation television sitcom Sanford and Son. And he's holding his chest like it's the big one, and they're pushing it. And then I think, they shouldn't do that to him. And then he turned into, I'm not trying to get religious here, but he turned into Jesus all of a sudden, and now they're pushing him, and I thought, well, that's sacrilegious to push him like that. And then just as that was happening, it morphed into this other person that wasn't Jesus, but had like a long hair and beard and a robe and sandals and shit that looked like maybe one of them guys that like hung with Jesus in the day or something. And I'm looking at him, and we make eye contact with each other, and he yells across the field to me, and he says, "Hey man, do you have 2 10s for a 5 or 2 quarters for a nickel?" And I thought, what? And then he said, "And could you tell me how to get to Ark of Butler, or can a man even get there from here?" And I knew in that moment, brothers and sisters, that I was never going to ever go back to football practice again for as long as I was alive. And while to this day I still follow Coach Boyer and the Beaverton Beavers because A, I think this really might be the year we win district, and B, we got the coolest fucking goalposts in the whole state. There's no arguing that. And that, friends and neighbors, is the touching story of how I went from the scoreboard watching jock that my dad was hoping for, and later became the peace-loving, pot-smoking, porn-watching, lazy-ass hippie that stands before you this evening.